You don't need to prove anything, because the truth is, this world doesn't break you with war. It breaks you more subtly, more cruelly. It makes you fight yourself. It convinces you to question your worth. It invites others to laugh at you, to overlook you, to treat your presence like background noise, like you were never really there at all. But the most dangerous force you'll face isn't hatred. No, it's being underestimated. It's being seen as harmless, irrelevant, incapable, someone not even worth paying attention to. And here's the trap. If you don't understand that truth early, you'll spend your life chasing recognition, approval, validation, all while others, bolder or simply more cunning, use your invisibility to climb in silence. Machiavelli understood this reality better than most. He didn't waste time teaching people how to shine in the spotlight. Instead, he taught them how to use the darkness, to weaponize the shadows, to make them laugh, to make them drop their guard, and then, just as they turn away, strike. No warnings, no bravado, just one clean, calculated blow, cold as steel, sharpened in silence. Have you ever been underestimated? Then good, you're already halfway there. So what isn't noticed is never stopped. The one who remains unseen controls the outcome. They don't break you by attacking. No, they break you with polite smiles, with indifference. Break you by pretending you're not even in the room. You felt that sting, haven't you? That quiet humiliation, not of being hated, but of being invisible. You show up, you wait, you listen. You try to stay kind, to stay patient. But the room always seems to favor the louder, the bolder, the arrogant, you've been told. Your time will come. That effort will be rewarded. That someday, those who overlooked you will respect you. But do they ever? Not really. In fact, they grow even bolder in their contempt. They interrupt you mid-sentence. They smile, nod, but mentally you've already been erased from their list of people who matter. And through it all, you stay silent. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that silence was strength, that humility was noble. But here's a bitter truth. In a world that worships noise, your silence isn't seen as wisdom. It's seen as weakness. And your humility? It's not admired, it's exploited. You're not broken because you lack talent or value. Times have you felt like the ghost in the room, present, alert, absorbing every detail yet invisible. You smile and eyes move past you. You speak, but your words dissolve before they reach the ears of others. You contribute, but someone else claims the credit. And worst of all, you start to internalize it. You begin to think maybe they're right. Maybe you are forgettable. Maybe you don't belong. That is the real pain, not the pain of being hated, but the slow, invisible erosion of being unseen. Has to do the job. You've taken over. But what if I told you that this pain ... isn't a curse? That it's not weakness, but a signal. A subtle invitation to evolve, to become dangerous in a way that doesn't require noise, spotlight, or validation. Because in this world, the ones who are overlooked possess something that the celebrated never do. Freedom to move. In the blind spots, freedom to build without scrutiny. Freedom to sharpen your edge in silence, while others waste their strength, chasing applause and attention. When they assume you're weak, they stop bracing for your rise. When they think you're irrelevant, they stop watching. And when they stop watching, that's when the window opens. But only if you've done the deeper work, if you've turned that pain into patience, that invisibility into insight, and that silence into strategy. You don't need to be loud to be lethal. You don't need to be seen to be significant. You don't need to be praised to be powerful. What you do need is to stop resenting your invisibility and start using it. Start seeing it for what it really is, a position of power no one suspects. So ask yourself honestly, how many years have you wasted trying to be acknowledged, trying to be visible, when all that time could have been used to prepare in the shadows? You already know what rejection feels like. You know what it's like to be doubted, overlooked, labeled as not enough. But that place, that overlooked corner, is exactly where your power begins. Let them think you're harmless. Them mock you. Let them turn their backs. Because while they're busy watching each other, competing for surface-level wins, you are not standing still. You're building. You're studying. You're becoming a version of yourself they won't even recognize until it's already too late, in the dark. A different version of you is forming, one that no longer begs for attention, one that doesn't need to be invited to the table because it's been busy building its own. This version chooses when to reveal itself and to whom. Now ask yourself, why do people underestimate you? It's not because you failed or fallen short. It's because of how the human mind is wired. We're not trained to notice what's calm or grounded. We're pulled toward spectacle, toward what is loud, flashy, and assertive. Society teaches us to associate confidence with volume and power with presence. From school hallways to boardrooms, from friendships to social feeds, the world rewards those who dominate space, not those who earn it quietly with substance. So when someone like you walks in quiet, still composed, they don't see strength, but what they're reacting to isn't you. It's their own conditioning, their own mental programming. We live in an age of performance addiction, an era where presence is confused with productivity, where relevance is measured by how often you post, how fast you reply, how loud you speak. In this noise-obsessed system, restraint is mistaken for weakness. Stillness is dismissed as being unimportant, and patience. That gets misread as passivity. But Machiavelli warned us long ago, the game of power doesn't reward the loudest voice in the room, it rewards the one with the most control. True control begins only where ego ends. So let me ask you, have you ever seen a lion stalk its prey? Does it roar before it strikes? No, it waits, silent, watchful, terrifyingly. Calm, because it knows something the others don't. It waits, still, silent, completely composed. Every second it doesn't attack is not hesitation, it's calculation. Every still moment is a second invested in certainty. Because when the lion finally moves, there's no chance left for the prey to react. No warning, no escape, just inevitability. Now, apply that same principle to your life, to your workplace, your family dinners, your circle of friends. In fact, you possess something others lost the moment they started seeking attention. You have the element of surprise. And when you are underestimated, you are unmonitored. And no one's watching, no one's tracking, and that ... is your greatest advantage. Nice. Because in the absence of eyes, you are free to build, to evolve, to prepare. You can observe silently, learn patiently, and adapt without resistance. Not a flaw. That is strategic invisibility. And in a world addicted to validation where everyone's shouting to be seen, you are the one who remains sober, clear-headed, focused. But the power of this goes even deeper. There's a psychological concept called projection. What does it mean? It means that most people don't see you as you really are. They see you as a reflection of themselves. If they're insecure, they assume your silence is fear. If they're arrogant, they mistake your humility for irrelevance. And if they're terrified of being ignored, they mock those who dwell comfortably in the shadows. So let's be clear, you're not being underestimated because you lack strength or value. You're underestimated because you don't match their formula. You don't play by their rules. You disrupt their mental model. And that makes you dangerous in ways they haven't yet begun to understand. But you understand it. And now you're faced with a choice. Will you keep chasing their approval, their spotlight, their shallow praise? Or ... will you choose differently? Will you turn your silence into strategy? Will you stay patient while they scramble for visibility? Because while they fight to be seen, you're waiting, calculating, watching for the moment they stop looking, over their shoulder. And when that moment arrives, you won't need to raise your voice. You won't need applause. You'll have something far sharper. Precision, timing, a cold, measured calmness that slices through illusions. Without ever making a sound, if this message resonates with something deep inside you, if you know the pain of being overlooked but also feel the burning truth of your potential, then this isn't just a story, it's a signal. And if you believe in sharing signals like this with others who need them, consider supporting this channel with a super thanks. It's more than a gesture. It's how we keep building messages like this raw, real awakening. And if you feel this truth, don't just sit quietly. Like, share, and subscribe. Not because we chase numbers, because someone out there is still convinced they're weak. simply because no one's watching them grow. They don't see you yet. Good, because by the time they do, you'll already be too far ahead to catch. The moment we feel underestimated, most of us fall into the same fatal trap. We rush to prove ourselves. We speak too much. We explain too much. We try to win them over, to earn our place in their eyes. But here's the bitter truth. The moment you feel the need to prove anything, that's the beginning of self-betrayal. You start bending, shrinking, overcompensating. And in doing so, you lose the very edge that made you powerful to begin with. Your unpredictability, your silence, your mystery. You become obvious. And what's obvious is no longer feared. It's predictable, easily mapped, easily measured. And in the realm of power, what can be predicted can be controlled or dismissed. Let's break it down. Mistake number 1, explaining too much. The moment someone questions your value, your reflex may be to explain, to justify, to convince them of your worth. But Machiavelli warned us, he who explains too much loses leverage. Why? Because every extra word uttered in desperation is a silent admission, a confession. You're not just speaking, you're revealing your need. You're signaling that their approval matters to you. And the second someone senses that, you've handed them the blueprint to your manipulation. Those who crave validation are the easiest to move because their identity isn't rooted within, but balanced in the hands of others. Mistake number 2, overcompensating with noise. You start pushing harder, posting more, talking louder, subtle bragging, masked as updates, hoping, maybe begging for someone to finally take notice. But attention gained through performance isn't respect. At best, it earns pity. Worst, quiet contempt. Because the truth is, real power doesn't scream. It doesn't flood timelines or fill rooms with noise. It creates tension in the silence. It holds weight not because it's always visible, but because it might strike at any moment. Mistake number 3, letting rejection rewrite your identity. This one cuts the deepest, because rejection, when repeated, becomes internalized. Start mistaking the silence of others for a verdict on your worth. You absorb their neglect as truth. Once that happens, you're at a dangerous crossroads. One path turns you bitter, reactive, cynical, combative. The other dissolves you quietly, subtly, until you vanish, even to yourself. But neither of those fates is your destiny. You weren't born to plead or perform. You weren't made to beg for attention. You were born to build, quietly, relentlessly. Mistake number 4, playing the same game as your enemy. When someone disrespects you, the temptation is to meet them with the same energy, to fight fire with fire. But that's exactly what they want. Because the moment you react emotionally, you surrender your advantage. Machiavelli cautioned, never let your enemy determine the battlefield. And yet, every time you try to prove yourself to those who've already dismissed you, you're doing just that. You're playing their game on their board, by their rules, and you've already lost before the first move. So what should you do instead? Withdraw, not as a sign of weakness, but as a strategic maneuver. Observation is not passivity. Precision. Let them continue underestimating you. Let them laugh. Let them grow arrogant in your absence. Because the most devastating strike doesn't come with warnings or build up, it lands when no one is watching. And that is your true power. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, you become undeniable. Something in your energy shifts. You're no longer reactive. You become intentional, calm, strategic. You don't shout your presence, you radiate it. You no longer try to convince the room. You control the atmosphere. So now ask yourself with brutal honesty, which of these mistakes have you been making? Are you explaining too much? Trying too hard to be heard, seen, understood? Maybe it's time to disappear, not out of defeat, but out of precision, because predators don't bark, they watch. And when the timing is right, they don't ask to be noticed, they act. And when they act, it's too late for anyone to stop them. Don't prove, don't perform, don't react. Come the quiet storm they never prepared for. Machiavelli never told you to be kind for kindness' sake. He told you to be feared when necessary and ignored when it's useful. because he understood something the modern world still refuses to accept. Visibility is not the same as power. And when you master invisibility, you hold the game in your hands. In fact, in the wrong moment, visibility is vulnerability, he wrote. The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world is made up of the vulgar. Let that sink in. The majority are not guided by reason or depth. They're enchanted by surface. Most people aren't searching for substance. They're hypnotized by noise. They chase confidence that screams from rooftops rather than control, that whispers beneath the surface. So Machiavelli didn't craft his philosophy for the masses. He wrote it for the few, for the predator moving silently in a world addicted to attention. He understood that if you must choose between being loved or feared, always choose fear, not because cruelty holds honor, but because needing to be loved places your strength in someone else's hands. Love is a condition. Fear, when earned wisely, is a weapon. It anchors power in a way affection never can. Let's go deeper. In The Prince, Machiavelli breaks completely from idealism. He does not entertain fairy tales about how people ought to behave. Instead, he focuses on how people do behave flawed, fickle, and self-interested. They forget favors. They betray convenience. They adore strength and ridicule hesitation. Harsh. Maybe, but true. So what does that mean for you? It means if you're underestimated, good. That's not a weakness. It's a shield. You're not a threat in their eyes. You're a ghost. And ghosts don't get hunted. They aren't noticed until it's far too late. Until their cold presence fills the room. No one knows how to stop them. Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't just about war or strategy. It was about psychological invisibility. He knew that a visible threat can be prepared for, contained, neutralized. But a threat that hides in plain sight, that's the one no one sees coming, and therefore, no one can stop. Picture your life as a kingdom. Every emotion you express is like a guard posted at a gate. Every reaction you offer is a gate left wide open. Most people leave their emotional gates unguarded, rushing to react to every insult, every disagreement, every challenge. But the Machiavellian doesn't respond so easily. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't expose himself. He observes, quietly. He listens. He lets the enemy become comfortable. He lets them become arrogant. And in that very arrogance, they reveal the flaw in their armor. It was silence, sharpened like a dagger. It was letting others underestimate you so you could turn that miscalculation into total control. The loud man in the room, he wants to be admired. He wants to be liked. But the quiet one, he wants your position. And he's willing to wait as long as it takes to take it from you. This is not about playing fair. It's about playing intelligently. The world does not reward the best intentions, or even the best ideas. It rewards the most prepared minds. In preparation, the real kind, doesn't happen under the spotlight. It happens behind the curtain, in private, far away from applause. Look around. The ones who hold real power aren't performing for attention. They aren't seeking followers. They're pulling strings behind the scenes. They're calculating 5 steps ahead, while others fight over likes, comments, and empty praise. They don't play for popularity. They play for control. So if you're tired of being underestimated, don't resist. Embrace it. Let their dismissal protect you. Their laughter give you space. Let their blindness become your camouflage. Use the silence not to sulk, but to sharpen your blade. Because once you're ready to move, they won't even see you coming. When you walk the path of Machiavelli, you're no longer pleading for recognition. You are orchestrating your own arrival with precision and purpose, not by force, not by noise, but by quietly removing the crown before anyone notices it's gone. There comes a moment, an unmistakable shift. When silence no longer feels like punishment, it becomes power. When being overlooked no longer wounds you, it protects you. That moment, quiet but irreversible, marks the shift. It's the psychological turning point where something fundamental in you changes. You no longer ask, why don't they see me? Instead, you think, good. Let them stay blind, because now you've stopped reacting. You've walked away from the exhausting chase of trying to be understood, trying to fit in, trying to earn a place in rooms that were never built for you. You've stopped waiting for validation. You've stopped bleeding for those who never even recognized the worth of your wounds. You've crossed over from the one who felt invisible to the one who chooses invisibility. And that subtle, powerful decision changes everything. Most people remain trapped in reaction mode, reacting to disrespect, reacting to absence, reacting to the sting of exclusion. But every reaction, whether loud or silent, is a quiet confession. A signal that you're still emotionally entangled, still hoping for a different outcome, still needing their recognition to feel real, but not anymore. The Machiavellian mindset doesn't react. It reconfigures. It absorbs rejection and recycles it into reach. It takes absence and refines it into armor. It takes invisibility, what most people fear, and sharpens it into pure strategy. Because here's what most never understand. Silence is not absence. Silence is design. Once this shift happens, you don't wait around for a seat at someone else's table. You start building your own, quietly, carefully, below their radar. Let them think you've vanished. Let them assume you've disappeared. In truth, you've only relocated your energy. You're no longer investing it in chasing their attention. Now you're channeling it into your reinvention. And this isn't about pretending things don't hurt. This is not toxic positivity. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is strategic, emotional disengagement. It's the art of withdrawing without weakness, of mastering your own inner world rather than reacting to someone else's. Because power doesn't come from pretending to be fearless. It comes from mastering fear, from turning pain into raw material, into tactics, into transformation. You let go of the version of yourself that needed applause to feel alive. You bury that version not with bitterness, but with clarity. And that clarity, it doesn't make you colder. It makes you sharper, cleaner, focused. You become clear that not everyone deserves access to you. Clear that silence creates more leverage than noise ever could. Clear that people only respect what they cannot predict. So what does this shift actually look like? It's when you stop feeling the need to explain your ideas in every room. You no longer defend your absence. You no longer over-explain your silence. You notice when people underestimate you until you let them. Because now you understand what that really is. A gift, a shield, a delay in their awareness. While they relax, you prepare. While they dismiss, you refine. While they watch someone else, you sharpen your edge quietly in the dark. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are quicker to forget the death of a father than the loss of their fortune." They don't guard themselves from what they perceive as harmless. And as long as they believe you are nothing, they leave their defenses wide open. But when you shift, you stop trying to be something in their eyes. Start becoming everything in the shadows, not to impress them, but to be ready for when the throne is left unguarded. Ready for the moment when their laughter fades, and you're already behind the curtain. You only need to be ready. You need to be undeniable. So, how does this mindset actually manifest in the real world? How does the quiet strength of being underestimated transform into a real-world strategic weapon? Let's break it down step by step. Let the others race for the spotlight. Let them chase applause, flaunt achievements, and battle for the loudest voice in the room. Let them compete for attention and scramble for credit. But you play the long game. You operate on a different wavelength. Don't broadcast your ambitions. Don't unveil your full blueprint. Let them think you're just quiet, maybe even passive. Let them overlook you. Because in the background, you have the clearest view. You're the observer. You're watching the flow of power, the undercurrents of politics, the subtle shifts in alliances. You track emotional vulnerabilities and egos without ever revealing your position. And while others fight for fleeting applause, you're quietly constructing long-term leverage. That's real power. Strategy tip. In meetings, speak only when necessary. But when you do, speak with clarity and precision. Say less, but make each word land like a deliberate strike. Your voice should not be background noise. It should be a moment of sharp focus. And when you win, don't gloat. Don't broadcast. Reposition. Let your results whisper what their egos try to scream. Second, in relationships, don't beg, don't chase, and don't over-explain. The one who loses emotional control is always the one who's manipulated. If you're constantly justifying yourself, explaining your heart, your intentions, your effort, then you've already surrendered authority. The louder you try to prove your value, the more invisible you become. Let them underestimate your emotional control. Let them misread your patience as passivity. Because you're not weak, you're composed. You're simply watching, not reacting. You're waiting. And in love, that's not weakness. It's preparation. Because when the day comes that they realize what they lost, you'll be too far ahead, already out of reach. Strategy tip. When someone ignores your value, don't raise your voice. Don't try to plead for their vision. Instead, raise your worth through distance, through silence, through the kind of quiet excellence they never saw coming. Third, in business and entrepreneurship, learn the power of delayed disruption. Think about Amazon, Netflix, Tesla. Each started small. Each was underestimated, even ridiculed. Tiny sparks in massive arenas. People laughed. The giants ignored them. And then suddenly they exploded, not because they shouted louder, but because they observed longer. They studied the giants, watched their weaknesses, then moved with lethal timing. They didn't need fanfare. They needed precision. Strategy tip. Never reveal your next move prematurely. Build it in silence. Let the product, the service, the moment arrive too fast for the world to counter. Let their arrogance be your camouflage. While they're relaxed, you're already in motion. Fourth, in the world of influence, let obscurity shape your mystique. Not everyone needs to know your full story, your process, your suffering. In a world that overshares every moment, restraint becomes power. Every time you explain too much, you dissolve the mystery. True presence is never desperate. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't beg to be followed. It simply is felt, remembered, impossible to ignore. Strategy tip. Speak less, and when you do, make it surgical. A voice that stays quiet is powerful precisely because it's rare. When it finally speaks, the room listens. You don't need to go viral every day. You only need to become unforgettable. Once. And that one moment must be prepared in private, quietly, without distraction, because, in the end, the world doesn't fear the lion who roars every hour. It fears the one who roars once with perfect timing. When the prey has their back turned and hears the brutal truth, you can be powerful or you can be obvious. You can't be both, so choose. In this world of noise and endless exposure, subtlety becomes your greatest ally. But others crave attention. Them showcase every highlight, document every small win, and seek validation in the form of likes, applause, or empty praise. Let them sell noise because that's all they know. You build substance. You move with intention. While they perform, you prepare. While they talk, you listen. While they celebrate too early, you study their weaknesses. And when the time is right, you don't announce it, you don't decorate it, you simply strike swift, sharp, and without hesitation. You move when their guard is down, when their arrogance has left the door wide open. And when that moment comes, you won't have to explain. You won't defend. You won't justify your rise. You'll simply walk through the door they never thought you could reach, leaving them scrambling to figure out how they missed the signs. Let them ignore you. Let them laugh. Let them underestimate you. Because in truth, that is the most generous gift they'll ever give you, the freedom to rise without resistance. To sharpen yourself in silence while they grow comfortable in their delusion. The shadows are not your enemy. They are your kingdom. Most people fear the dark because they associate it with weakness, with being left behind, with being unseen. But you've learned that true power doesn't beg for the spotlight. It thrives where eyes don't reach. At first, you don't recognize the ones who rule these shadows. They walk in without fanfare. They don't pull focus. No need to impress. No urge to prove. And yet when they enter a room, something shifts. The atmosphere tightens, not from pressure, but presence. They don't demand respect. They radiate. Calm, composed, fully aware of who they are. This is the new face of strength, not loud, not dramatic, not crafted to fit public expectations. It's quiet, it's deliberate, shaped by years of being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated, forged in silence, but sharper than anything ever announced. They weren't always like this. They were once like you, hurt, confused, wondering why their kindness was seen as weakness, why their loyalty was forgotten, why they were passed by like they were invisible. They carried those questions in silence. But they didn't stay there. They didn't lower themselves to beg for attention. Instead, they went inward. They turned down the volume of the outside world and began building a version of themselves so secure, so solid, that no rejection, betrayal, or manipulation could ever reach it again. That's what makes them dangerous. They are no longer baited by disrespect. It's no longer moved by petty insults or passive aggression. Because when you can't be triggered, you can't be controlled. They don't react. They study. They file every insult, every dismissive glance, every condescending smile, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Every experience becomes data. Every slight becomes a lesson. And when the time is right, they act. No noise, no signal, no warning. Just movement. And by the time others notice, it's already done. They don't seek revenge. They don't need it. Because their elevation is the revenge. It's quiet, undeniable, impossible to undo. So how do you recognize this kind of strength? In the way they speak, low, careful, without rushing to fill silence. They don't argue with fools. They understand that energy is currency, and they spend it only where it multiplies, not where it's wasted. They don't chase attention. They don't explain their silence. They don't repeat themselves. They're not addicted to being liked. Because they've matured beyond the need for approval, that's what makes them unshakable. They don't post to impress. They post to position. They don't attend to be seen. They attend to observe. They don't love blindly. They love with discernment. Because they've learned sometimes the softest trap is comfort and affection without boundaries. That's just a cage dressed up to feel safe. The new face of strength knows what it's like to be underestimated, tasted the sting of being forgotten, and instead of folding under that weight, they built themselves into something unforgettable. But instead of shrinking, they used it as fuel. That rejection, that silence, that moment when they were cast aside, didn't break them, it forged them. They took the weight of being unseen and carried it like armor. They trained in silence. They disciplined their minds when no one was watching. They mastered their impulses, their urges, their emotions until their very presence no longer asked for attention. It demanded recalibration. They didn't need to enter loudly. Atmosphere shifted because something in them had changed. They became unshaken, not moved by opinions, only by purpose, no longer reacting to the noise of the crowd, but responding only when necessary. And when they chose to strike, it wasn't just to win. It was to change the terms of the entire game. Because their true weapon wasn't brute power. It was quiet, patient preparation. Their greatest edge wasn't force. It was clarity, discernment. They had studied every moment in silence. And it had turned them into something others could no longer doorstop. They no longer needed to be seen to know they mattered. No longer needed validation to feel their strength. This is who you are becoming. Not soft, but silent. Not weak, but watchful. Not loud, but lethal. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to prove your value. You don't need permission to enter the room. You are no longer seeking entry. You've become the force that shifts the room itself. You are sovereign, whole, complete. You walk with the weight of someone who no longer seeks to impress, but to impact. Every silence now has intent. Every move is calculated. Every word is measured, and none are wasted. You are not here to entertain. You are not here to please. You're not here to be readable, relatable, or easily defined. You are here to shift gravity. Let them keep talking. Let them keep laughing. Let them build thrones out of empty applause and hollow praise. While they chase popularity, you build permanence. While they seek attention, you refine precision. You disappear not to run, but to sharpen. When they finally realize the weight of your presence, it will be too late. Because by then, you won't be the version of yourself they dismissed. You'll be reborn, colder, clearer, unreachable. From now on, if they don't respect your words, you offer silence. If they take your time for granted, you offer absence. If they misjudge your strength, let them. Because convincing people is no longer your mission, coming undeniable is. And the only thing more terrifying than being feared is being misjudged, till it's far too late to correct their mistake. This is your final form, not loud but unmistakably heard. Not seen too early, but deeply felt, forever. If you felt something shift in you during this message, don't just move on. Own that shift. Let it shape how you walk, how you speak, how you move forward from this very moment. Say nothing but let your actions speak in new tones from now on. And if this reached you while you were sitting quietly in your own silence, no, this wasn't just coincidence. This message was waiting for you. Help us send this signal further. Leave a super thanks to support this channel and share this video with someone who's been quiet for far too long. Because maybe, just maybe their silence wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the beginning of something unstoppable. Until next time, silence is power. Use it well.